I'm Professor Jason Hall-Spencer. I work at University of Plymouth, but also for the International Programme for the State of the Ocean.
How are you finding COP so far?
It's been uplifting, I'll be honest with you. I thought it was going to be very depressing and just about all the problems we're facing and the enormity of them, but it's turning out to be actually the economists are saying, well, we've got the money to pay for some of these solutions, and they're not going to damage the planet, they're actually to make things better.
You say that, yet your paper that you've launched today raises some of the warnings about the challenges we face with the climate crisis in the ocean. Can you explain what some of those crises are?
Well, what we're seeing is that because the ocean has absorbed 91% of the heat that we've been producing because of greenhouse gas emissions, that's supercharging typhoons, and it's making coastal flooding much worse, and it's causing sea level rise and the loss of habitats around the coastline, and they really seriously need protection, because by protecting them we protect ourselves, because what they do is they take up carbon from the atmosphere, and something like a mangrove, for example, can protect shorelines, yet 60% of mangroves worldwide have been lost since 2000, the year 2000. So, you know, the rate of devastation is very, very high.
In the paper you raise 6 science-based challenges and solutions. Explain some of those to us.
Well, one of the biggest science-based solutions we can see is to ensure that the high seas, that area that's beyond national jurisdiction, has got a high seas treaty. Because only with a treaty that protects that area can we stop damaging practices. Because at the moment, it's looking like some industries want to strip mine the seabed for rare earth metals to make batteries. Now, we haven't needed those batteries before, and going forwards, we could do without them, and without causing damage to this massive habitat.
You mentioned some of the destructive practices there. What is it governments here could do today that could help protect the ocean?
Well, one of the main things is to do with food, and the other is to do with energy. So the ocean is so vast, it could provide us with a lot more energy than it does at the moment. We're expanding wind farms at the moment, but they could go much further. And it's exciting to see the possibilities of floating wind farms, because they could seriously reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. So could turbines in the sea as well. That could account for 11% of our needs for energy if we put these turbines in the sea. So there's huge possibilities as we decarbonise quickly. But what we want to stop doing, for sure, is making things worse. So by, for example, subsidising the oil and gas industry to explore for more subsea reserves is crazy. Subsidising the fishing industry to really badly damage the seabed is crazy as well. I don't know if you know, but we've got a third of our waters around the UK are in so-called marine protected areas, and yet trawling the seabed and dragging dredges across the seabed is allowed in 95% of those. Just doesn't make sense, right? And some of the fines that fishermen would get for damaging the seabed are way lower than the actual true value of those habitats. So I think the important thing we need to do is actually value the ocean a lot more. It needs to be shouted from the rooftops at places like COP26, because it feels like it's hardly being mentioned.
You mentioned there the idea of protecting the ocean. There's hopes today that 30 by 30 will be talked about by the presidency at COP. How close are we to 30 by 30, and what does protecting the ocean mean, and what should it mean?
30 by 30 means protecting 30% of the ocean by the year 2030. And we've got some of the way. For example, the UK has actually designated large marine protected areas in its offshore territories as well as within the UK EEZ, but we haven't got to the next stage of implementing those NPAs effectively. So at the moment they're like paper parks, a lot of them, and even in the ones that are supposedly highly protected, extensive damage is still occurring illegally.
Here at COP, the ocean has a day and it is shared with other things. How do we get the ocean better heard, and how should it be represented here at COP and at future COPs?
I think at this COP, it's a pity we haven't got a pavilion for the ocean. I mean, there's a pavilion for salt marshes, there's a pavilion for wicker baskets, but there isn't a pavilion for the ocean, which is, after all, 71% of this planet. It's what's keeping it inhabitable by life. It always has. We rely on the ocean to keep our own lives sustainable. And if we damage it further, we're clearly going to cause absolute havoc. The big thing that worries me is sea level rise, because there are people that can't afford to protect themselves and their countries and their assets from that rising sea. They're going to migrate, and that's going to cause all sorts of problems going forwards in terms of wars and pestilence and all the worst things that you could imagine.
For the ocean, what does success look like at this conference?
I don't know. So a very successful breakthrough at this conference would be to get a high seas treaty enacted. so that the high seas area is protected effectively. And another thing that we could do is actually make MPAs fully protected or highly protected. The ocean, as you can see, covers a vast part of the planet, and yet it tends to be forgotten that all of these COP26 and COP25 and all the previous COPs hardly mention the ocean, and yet it takes up 90% of the heat out of the atmosphere and actually keeps our planet inhabitable.
Jason, today you've launched this paper. Talk to us about the paper and the challenges it is raising for us at this conference.
So today we've launched quite an important paper that sets out 6 things we must do going forwards with absolute urgency, scaling up from what governments are doing at small levels. For example, at the moment, the UK is planting small amounts of salt marsh and small amounts of seagrass. We need much more of that. And in our international territories, we need more mangroves, because we've cut down about 90% of these things worldwide. We need to regenerate them, because they not only provide biodiversity, they also provide carbon sequestration.